It is an honor to introduce someone who is doing the kind of work that we want out of our public communication system. The single best existing model of the journalism we need, the journalism that tells the stories that are not otherwise being told, is Democracy Now! She needs no further introduction. Please welcome Amy Goodman.
Well, I'm honored to be here and to follow Mark in his brave reporting in Fallujah. Tune into Democracy Now! Soon to see it, because it's so important. I was speaking at University of California, Santa Barbara, and it was after Mark's film was shown, and really it was silent in the room as the film was shown, and then afterwards. Why? Because we in the United States are not used to seeing casualties like this. Mark was there. Very few Western journalists were inside, as he described. Also, Al Jazeera was covering Fallujah. They were very much targeted. And I think Mark's last point about the targeting of journalists and how dangerous it is. Victoria Clark, I think she's called Tory now, who was a consultant for CNN. Now she's working for ABC News, but don't forget where she started. Well, she started at a big PR firm in Washington, but then she became the spokesperson for the Pentagon. And as reporters were being killed, she was saying, specifically, right after the invasion, when the U.S. military shelled the Palestine Hotel, known for being a hotel for hundreds of unembedded journalists. Well, Baghdad is a dangerous place. They shouldn't be there, which is a very clear message, I think, to unembedded reporters. She has called the embedding process a spectacular success. I would say that the embedding process has brought the U.S. media to an all-time low. Because if you're going to see and hear and read the reports of journalists embedded in the front lines of troops, let's see them embedded in Iraqi hospitals, in Iraqi communities, in the peace movement around the world, to really understand the implications and ramifications of war. That's the kind of war reporting we need. And if you're going to do honest war reporting, it shouldn't just be in Iraq or Afghanistan. It should be in the prisons of this country. It should be in every poor community. It should be in every underfunded school and hospital, the emergency rooms that have become the health care venues for the poor. Because let's remember, when there is a war abroad where billions is spent, think about what isn't spent at home. And as we were saying in the last panel for the young man who got up to the mic and said, please report on the prisons, we are horrified when we look at what's happened at Guantanamo, when we look at what's happened at Bagram, when we've looked at what's happened at Abu Ghraib. But those images are not so foreign if you have been imprisoned in this country, in certain prisons. We have to start at home. We wrote the book Static, my brother David and I, and we have this chapter on exporting abuse. The men who designed Abu Ghraib were the heads of the Department of Corrections of Connecticut, New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah. All of them were forced out of their positions because of brutality against the prisoners. Where did they end up? In Iraq, setting up Abu Ghraib. It is very important to understand this story. Yes, when we hear about Rumsfeld leaving, there's criticism of him in the press. He was very brusque. He called for streamlining the military. He wasn't open enough to other forms of criticism. That's not really the problem with Rumsfeld. I think it can be summed up in a word: torture. Torture. I mean, what we have come to represent to the rest of the world in the name of the war on terror is terror. The imprisoning at Guantanamo of hundreds of men, more than 700. Last Thursday, 5 years ago, the first prisoners in shackles and blindfold and handcuffs were brought to Guantanamo. Hundreds have been released, no charge. None of them have been tried and convicted. We have to redefine the terms of the debate. As journalists, we have to be extremely careful about the words that we use. When we say war on terror, we've got to be careful about those quotes. When we talk about the surge, as Moyers pointed out the other day, what are we talking about? The augmentation, as Condoleezza Rice would have you believe, or the escalation of war. Even Operation Iraqi Freedom, the name that the Pentagon developed for the invasion. Right before that, they had another one, Operation Iraqi Liberation, but they got rid of it because of the acronym OIL. But Operation Iraqi Freedom, to use that as the name of the coverage, the way CNN and MSNBC and NBC did, we have to demand that the media be independent. That's why we are all here. It's absolutely critical. But we also have to be as fierce, as Dr. Martin Luther King would say if he were here and did say before he was assassinated, as fierce about what is happening to people here at home who live in another world. We live in parallel worlds in the United States. That world that is so undercovered by the media, almost not at all, but which millions of people live in, and that is the poor and the working poor, who are hardly represented. Not represented either at this conference as well, but we have to be very aware that the media should be here for all of us. It is an absolutely critical obligation across the board, the corporate media, the independent media, to hear the voices of those who are rarely covered, who are marginalized, who are iced out of the story. We have to have a level playing field. That's the role of the media. The media as a huge kitchen table that stretches across every community of this country that we all have a seat at, talking about the critical issues of the day, war and peace, life and death, and anything less than that is a disservice to a democratic society. Democracy Now!